Brett, how are you?
All right, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you.
Great.
It's 6 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order. Need to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you'll remain standing, Father Freeman.
I guess he's not here. We may have to do a moment of silence instead.
I think that's what we'll just do, a moment of silence. Okay. Welcome to everybody. I have one nice announcement, and this is something that Fred had covered in the Valley Echo there. That is, we have another state champion for the 2A, and that is Davis Kendall in the 500 meter indoor track, which I think is amazing. He's also, if you don't remember that name, he's a sophomore at Owen, but he also played on the championship 2A soccer team for Owen. So congratulations, young man. All right, next thing will be the proclamation. This is a proclamation celebrating 100th anniversary of the Black Mountain Shenandoah Valley Chamber of Commerce. Whereas the chamber was incorporated in 1923 by T.J. Archer, L.G. Bell, and Trillian Brown. Whereas the chamber will celebrate their 100th anniversary with activities through 2023. Whereas the organization supports, promotes business through tourism promotion and economic development in Black Mountain and the Shenandoah Valley. And whereas the chamber, comprised of local business owners and volunteers, is a viable resource to the area by promoting town events and local businesses. The chamber's visitor center provides information about current events and housing opportunities, which is vital to assist with any relocation questions that visitors may have. Excuse me. And whereas the town of Black Mountain encourages citizens and businesses to consider supporting the chamber through volunteering and membership. Now, therefore, I see Michael Sobel, Mayor of the town of Black Mountain, wish to recognize the years of service to our community by the Black Mountain Shenandoah Valley Chamber of Commerce on the occasion of their 100th anniversary, and thank them for their dedicated service to our area district, proclaimed this 13th day of February 2023. And Sharon is continuing to do an excellent job. Next, we have Chief Steve Parker to make a presentation.
Mayor, Council, thank you for allowing me this opportunity. One of the things that when I came here, one of the things that I had talked about was professionalism, and second was retention and recognizing the people that we have and the good staff. And last year, at the end of the year, the staff voted on an employee of the year, and that was agreed upon with the command staff of who that employee was. This year was Josh Kaiser, and a couple of things that he did in his leadership. One, he went to FBI command school and was able to attend that for leadership, as well as we had two very serious incidents within the community. One where a subject was waving a gun at community members and then ended up waving a gun at deputies. It involved shots. The subject went through I-40 in a pursuit, and Sergeant Kaiser and his team was able to apprehend that suspect without anybody getting hurt. And so that's a big deal. And then there was another pursuit, which we don't have very many, but apparently they all happen on a shift. We might need to talk to him about that. I don't know. But the other one, subject was wanted by the ATF. He was on parole violation. and he had numerous gun charges, and that was another pursuit where it ended with nobody getting hurt, but the subject did grab an officer's gun and tried to take the officer's gun. Can't say what his intentions were, but I wouldn't imagine that they're good if it's the end of a pursuit. And we were able to apprehend him as well. And it was his leadership during both of those serious cases that someone was apprehended, nobody got hurt. And then also his dedication to his staff, that I think that's why the department voted on him. And so we want to recognize Sergeant Josh Kaiser for Employee of the Year.
Congratulations. Good job. Congratulations. Good job. All right. Let's see a citizen. You got it.
Yes, I can, if you don't mind. Okay, for citizen comments, first we have Phil Bessetti signed up.
Yeah.
I'm Phil Bessetti. I live on Highview Drive. And I want to ask on behalf of Sally, but do we have dialogue with the Department of Transportation?
This is a citizen comment. At this particular point, we don't have any dialogue back and forth. So we can look into that and get you an answer on that.
I'd like to have some dialogue because the diagonal parking on Broadway with big trucks is an absolute hazard. If we could get signs, compact cars only, maybe that would help. But maybe parallel parking is the only answer. I don't know. But I perceive that the Department of Transportation has set up the rules, and we as citizens of Black Mountain don't have a say-so. I hope that's not true, but it seems to be. And we have to put a stop to it. Second thing I want to mention, I read in the newspaper of somebody who had lived in his house for about 40 years. He's the third owner. And because it's been put close to the golf course on a big lot, he is under pressure to sell it because it will be zoned for 3 houses instead of 1. I don't know. I just, being old myself and being in my house for 26 years now, I hate to think of my lot being too big and of anybody being forced to sell a home that they've owned for so long just to satisfy developers. Those are the 2 things that I want to
Very good.
talk about tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Possessor.
Thank you.
And next we have Rick Early.
You got the thing.
Hey folks, I'm Rick Early, 107 Oakland Drive, Black Mountain. I know you've got a challenge coming up with budgets. And the only reminder I would like to put forth is that starting fiscal year 21-22, the town had $3.3 million in debt. and $751,000 were allocated that fiscal year for debt service. That brought it down to 3 million, which is the beginning of this fiscal year's 22-23. And $571,000 were allocated for debt service. Don't know what that brings it down to. I didn't have Josh's number on that. But my concern going forward, or my appeal to you going forward, is please try to not incur additional debt. This year, there was an additional $580,000 in debt that was also incurred. And if you put those two numbers, 751 and 571, that's 1.3 million. That's 3 years of covering the recent pay increase. So you wouldn't have, if you didn't have any debt, you wouldn't have near the work to do that you've got coming up this in the next couple of 3 months. So I appreciate your really attention to that. Let's get that debt down, and please don't add any more. And I really don't need to say anything about raising taxes because some of those things go without being said. So, but I'm on your side. I really am. And I'll do everything I can to help you guys. I tried real hard to be literally on your side, but Bill got in the way of it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick. That's it. Okay. All right, next we move to transportation report. Jessica Thomas.
There it is. This is your first only transportation report. Normally it gets lumped into a variety of other things, but there's so much going on. We thought it deserved its own time and attention. Okay. First, I just wanted to share with you that there is a webpage now devoted to transportation projects in town. It's under the government tab where you see the departments. We thought this would be a little easier to find other than being hidden deep into the planning mini site. Programs and projects are updated regularly, and we try to keep that as up to date as we can. So the first projects we're going to talk about are NCDOT projects. I'm not the contact person for these projects, but I am faring on general updates from the department. The Blue Ridge Road interchange is on schedule. Up there you see a very colorful rendering of the design. 2023 being this year is the right-of-way date with construction on schedule for 2025. That date has jumped back and forwards in times, multiple times over the last several years, but this seems to be staying the course. So I am optimistic that things are looking good. We have had some meetings about the environmental design. Their consultants are out doing a lot of field work. Because we have adopted active transportation plans, DOT is required to implement those as part of this project. So not only are we getting an interchange, but we are getting 0.28 miles worth of multi-use path and just over half a mile of sidewalk in this project corridor. It is not extending beyond that. It is within only that corridor, but it's a start. And there is no cost to the town for those improvements. This is not a locally administered project. This is a typical interstate improvement project. So we are not, we're not ponying up any money for this interchange. Thank goodness for that. The 9th Street Bridge replacement comes from a different pot of money called the Municipal Bridge Fund. And this bridge failed its inspection in 2018. 5 major issues were identified. And the choice was to close the bridge or to replace the bridge. We have just finished negotiating the price for PE. DOT is administering this project, so they're suffering that for us. And it came in at $240,000. And we have a 20% match on all aspects of this project, and we pay them by phase. We are expecting significant increased cost for project construction. We will get updates about that when there is somewhere around 25–30% design. The engineers will let us know how bad it's looking. I would not be surprised if we saw construction costs double. And even though it is but a wee bridge, construction is not scheduled to take place until 2025.
Since it's built in 2018, how often is it re-inspected or checked for safety?
Jamie, how, is it every 2 years? Okay. If there was an intimate threat, they would tell us. Everything is fine as far as continuing to use it. We were put on notice that we had to do it. And just one word about that, since we are talking about budgets and big numbers, is that this is not the only bridge that we're going to be having these conversations about. There has been some changes at the congressional level about how these fundings are made available. And it is not known how much money is going to continue to be available. Right now, we benefit from an 80-20 split in the municipal program, but we do not know how strong that funding will be into the future. So those will be some conversations we continue to have.
South of that bridge, there's the bridge right there at the croquet court.
Mhm.
And that is just a culvert. Is this going to be the same type of bridge up there?
We do not know that. The engineers have not told us yet.
Okay.
It has to be slightly wider than the current bridge, so that will impact the design. And it also has utilities on it, so that will impact it too. So this is South Blue Ridge Road. This is another bridge replacement project from a different pot of money. And DOT is overseeing this as well. Construction will be phased side to side, so there will be no interruption in accessibility to anybody's house or for emergency services. And it's all DOT's dime. This will take place this summer. And we have no administration responsibility in this.
While we're in that Blue Ridge area, in this I-40 interchange, that bridge
Yes,
is also being replaced, correct?
it is.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. Just wanted to be sure.
So resurfacing projects, I went through all of our bike plans, and anything that recommended something along the lines of paved shoulders or bike lane or anything like this, I cross-referenced it against the resurfacing schedule at NCDOT and shared that with them and said, I have adopted plans, and when you make improvements, you have to consider them. And they informed me that those 3 projects were not feasible. So in that process, we went back and forth to see what was possible. And for those projects, which are on Old US 70, Blue Ridge Road, North Blue Ridge Road, Cragmont area, the only option were signage and sharrows because there was either no right-of-way, limited right-of-way, or topography issues. So all DOT can do for those particular areas are to do sharrows and signage. And some intersection improvements with signage both on the road and on signs.
You're saying, sorry,
You're okay.
rather than a bike lane.
Yeah, there's
proper.
nowhere to put it in these 3 situations. So some of those signs popped up immediately, which I thought that they would happen when they resurfaced the road, but they've already gone ahead and done that. But the street markings will not happen until the roads are resurfaced between now and 2025. These are 2 potential projects. These aren't really up for discussion tonight. I'm just sharing them with you. We will be discussing them later. This summer, the MPO will have a call for projects for the spot process. And these are 2 projects that have in the past not scored very high, but keep percolating through, and they keep getting attention from DOT. So this is a US 70 road diet. It is an incredible project. The price tag on it is over $20 million if built at a design year of like 2040. Hopefully maybe we can get there before then. But this would, so this area is overbuilt. So it leads to speeding, and it just does not carry that many cars. So the idea would be to ratchet down on some of the existing travel lanes and reallocate them to different uses. That sounds simple. If you could blow up that design and look at the cross sections, it's a lot more complicated than that. But it would allow sections for multimodal transportation for 1.32 miles. So you'd have 2 lanes, and you have a center turn lane, bicycle facilities, and ranging between 8 and 12 feet wide for the length of that corridor. This is over and beyond any of our recommended plans by far. It's not Shara's, it's not, it's not just a 4-foot bike lane, it's significant. So will have the opportunity to, say if you want to advance that to the next round of prioritization or not. Similarly is Blue Ridge Road. Once upon a time, my understanding is that Blue Ridge Road modernization was linked to the interchange project. How it got separated, I do not know the answer to that. This is, I think, an extremely high priority project. I have called everyone at DOT who will answer their phone to ask how to get this to happen. And they all just keep saying, please send it back through the prioritization process. When the interchange is constructed and we see increased traffic on Blue Ridge Road, we would like Blue Ridge Road to have consistent lane widths and improve circulation. And this process would do that. It doesn't create a 3-lane or anything like that. It just makes it standardized and considers a roundabout at South Blue Ridge Road. All of this was supported by the Blue Ridge Road Small Area Plan. And the extra bonus of this is that because DOT has adopted a complete streets policy and we have adopted multimodal plans through this corridor, this entire area would get bike lanes and sidewalks, potentially with an 80-20 cost share, but maybe at 100% DOT's dime. So that would be amazing.
So this project there would end up being wide when we go from South Blue Ridge Road back to number 9, which is the newest section of that road. There's wide shoulders on that. Are they looking to leave that the same, or are they looking to put sidewalks possibly in there?
That is way too far down the design process. That has not been determined.
But so what about from the South Blue Ridge Road out to Blue Ridge Assembly?
The goal, it doesn't, we know which side of the road, if I'm remembering correctly, it is the south side has multi-use path and the other side has bike lane. I'm sorry, sidewalk. But it's going to, the widths of the lanes are not consistent. That's one of the things that they want to fix in modernization. So potentially drainage improvements and the intersection. But exactly how wide or where anything is going, this is a doodle on a map. This is as far as that idea has gone at DOT's level.
The picture that we had there is not the entirety of Blue Ridge Road. Do you know the endpoints we'd be talking about here?
So on the west side, that is the endpoint for this project because it would tie into what is happening with the interchange project. And this one, that's as far as it went on the express design from DOT.
It's a mile from number 9 to Blue Ridge Road.
Yeah.
And it would be about 2/10 of a mile on the one to get to the interchange.
So, not only do we have improved traffic conditions and safety conditions, but we also really connect an area that is severely underserved by bike and ped infrastructure. So these are local active transportation projects. And I just wanted to set this up a little bit, what you're looking at. So currently the town has about 3.22 miles of greenway and trails. We have in excess of 10 miles of existing sidewalk. But with the projects we have going on now, between now and 2025, we will see 7.8 miles of new bike and ped improvements. That doesn't mean of just separated paths. It means of sharrows and sidewalks. All of this combined are putting us up way, way above any other town our size. These projects are recommended in the comprehensive plan under concepts of livability, connectivity, environmental concerns. And people who use active transportation on average are more physically fit, less obese, and have a reduced risk for cardiovascular disease. What you're looking at the map are census tracts. And the obesity rate in Black Mountain has a prevalence of 26.4% sorry, I read that wrong. For obesity, and the prevalence for physical inactivity is 23.5%. And these disparities are obvious when you look at the census tracts of where we are building a built environment that improves these conditions and in areas that are not having as much improvement. So we want to take these sorts of things into consideration. Access to sidewalks, trails, and greenways are proven to have impacts on health behaviors, and these are fallen into the category of neighborhoods and built environment and social determinants of health. So it's a big part of how we consider these activities. These are crude drawings on Google Maps, I apologize, of Cragmont Loop Phase 1 and 2. Last year we did Phase 1, making the loop around the park. This year we will do Phase 2, which is the yellow line. That's just an approximation of where it'll go. This was the first project put on the ground from the Greenway Master Plan in over a decade. And they are not huge distances, but they are critical connections between destinations and existing pedestrian infrastructure. The hang up is going to be Phase 3. Getting across Tomahawk Branch is complicated because the floodway is 67 feet wide, and we will have to achieve a no rise in that situation, which can be done. We'll probably just have to span it, but it just starts to get very expensive very quickly. The Gray Eagle Bike Boulevard project, we're getting ready to order a lot of our materials for this and start putting up signs. And our engineering folks who've helped us some with this are finessing some blessings on the crossing on Montreat Road on types of paint and things. And then we'll be able to finish that encroachment agreement. Once we get those, our beacons, our blinkies in, and our painting contractor on schedule, this project will be done in short order. EB 5547A and EB 5547B are two individual projects. These are going through what seems to be a never-ending paperwork process with NCDOT. You have one of those items on your agenda tonight. But where we are now with that is we can talk about that, but it's just going through paperwork, and then it has to go through third-party audit before we can issue the notice to proceed to our engineering firm and let them wrap this up.
The picture at the bottom there, that comes in front of Bilo's.
It actually starts at the
Where
intersection.
is that from that railroad? How does this get back to Riverwalk?
It doesn't. The pedestrian connection to EB 5547A is a Charlotte Street sidewalk project funded in this year. We actually have better drawings than this that we just received from our engineers the other day. We have a great partner in Buncombe County Schools. They will be relocating the fence, and they're going to be doing some projects as well on their own property. But essentially, there is existing sidewalk already on Charlotte Street, and there's existing sidewalk on East State, and this will allow you to get from one to the other without walking in the road. The Sharrow connects from Flat Creek Greenway to EB 5547A, and if you all have a better idea for that name, that'd be great. It's a mouthful. So this project and this project are sisters and brothers. They are the locally funded connection to the federal project. One is pedestrian improvements, one are bicycle improvements. They have different routes because you had different areas and different opportunities to work with. I did not originally budget for this to be painted this year, but I think we're going to have enough left over from our bike boulevard, if prices don't keep going up, to lay down the rest of those sharrows in the spring, hopefully.
So then coming down in front of Midland, right out here, is there what will be there?
Sharrows.
And so then it connects to
The
First Street, and then we would just use the sidewalk on First Street to get down to Riverwalk.
You mean Flat Creek Greenway?
Well, yeah, be able to Riverwalk Greenway at Flat Creek.
This EB 5547A is the project.
Okay, so we'll just simply use existing sidewalks on First Street to get from the creek up to Midland.
Well, the idea was to complete a pedestrian network through here. So you have your pedestrians can go this way down Charlotte and State, where there's existing sidewalks, and your cyclist can go up, over, and down from Midland instead of sending them onto State Street, which was DOT's preference. I'm not a super competent bike rider, so going through the neighborhood felt more comfortable to somebody like me too. So our current local transportation planning we have going on, we had this RFP posted for the Ridgecrest Trail Feasibility Study. This is in our Greenway Master Plan. And this is posted. We've extended the deadline a couple of times. We revised it to change, to remove a sentence that DOT asked us to take out. So we have received a few and we expect to have a few more. The traffic calming plan. So this started with a survey that was both oriented around traffic calming and also active transportation use. We figured let's just do one survey while we have people's attention. And we had 261 people respond, and we're currently crunching those numbers. I'm not trying to provide only summary data, but also more analytics so we can get really granular in what projects make sense to move forward with. This is a pretty innovative planning strategy around traffic calming. And I think it's going to allow the town to make long-term budget decisions as opposed to be put in a reactionary position. So we will be moving forward with that in the next couple of months. We've had a variety of traffic studies. The Honeycutt one-way is complete, marked, and open. We also have a Ridgeway evaluation moving forward. I understand the data has been collected, the models have been built, but the final report is not done. And this was done in private partnership, in a private-public partnership with business owners and the town to share the cost. We are experiencing a lot of development pressures in this area as we see commercial and residential development march eastward and take advantage of some opportunities in the area. We want to make sure if we are bringing people to this area that it is as safe as it can possibly be and solve as many problems at once. So I think that you will have our consultant Colleen Kitten back to share that with you, maybe at the March meeting if we're lucky, and make some recommendations based on those numbers.
What is the tentative cost on all this, and then what would the share? You say private public share
The town had, I think, $3,000 in it, in the study.
in the study.
I think it was
Is
11.
there any projection as to what this would cost?
Well, it depends on what you do. We are interested in piloting what is called a pedestrian advisory strip in this area, which is a low-cost way to make improvements, to do traffic calming and create a space for people to walk that is just designated by paint. And this is what smaller municipalities are trying out. It kind of gives you proof of concept before you spend $100,000 on a sidewalk. You can see if it works out and if people are using it. And maybe you don't need to spend the $100,000, maybe the paint's just fine. But that's something we've been chatting with our consultants about, of Black Mountain being really ripe for that, because we have such constrained, narrow roadways and topography issues that this might actually be a really interesting way to try it out. But there's no recommended typology at this point. That's just kind of what we've been tossing around. People walk through the street all the time over there, so I'd like to give them a place to be. That's it. I don't think that took 20 minutes. I feared it might.
Any questions? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Jessica. All right, next we have the consent agenda.
So for our consent agenda tonight, we have the adoption of minutes, our surplus property donation, which will be giving, I believe, old body cams to the Old Fort Police Department. A resolution in support of the local school calendar control. This just supports Buncombe County's quest to get control of their own calendar rather than have it be controlled in Raleigh. We also have a resolution requesting creating outdoor recreation economics services from the North Carolina Main Street and Rural Planning Center Rural Planning Program, and the amendment to the audit contract.
Do I hear a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Any discussion? Comments? I will say that this is one of the things Josh has gotten going on this core, which I think will really help our trails.
Good timing.
Excellent timing, excellent. Okay, then, no more discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously. And the next is unfinished business, an agreement between DOT and Town of Black Mountain for the EB 5547, Section B. That happens to be where the section of the greenway there that modified to go from Louise's out Vance Avenue down to Indy Oaks Trail.
I should have just stayed up here. So what you have is just a modification to an existing agreement. It changes the endpoints, which you all voted on over a year ago. And it took us this long to get our paperwork. This is a multi-phase process. There are 3 primary documents that have to agree with each other: the State Transportation Improvement Plan, the agreement between DOT and the town, and then the agreement between the town and the service provider, in this case being Michael Baker International. So all of those things have to have the same language and same dollar amounts in order for them to let us begin doing anything again. There is a typo in the agreement. I have firsthand experience with this with DOT. These are copy and pasted, the boilerplate language a lot of the time. And it is on page 4. The number in parentheses is correct, where the amount is spelled out is incorrect. And that's the only discrepancy that I could find. All the numbers in the table make sense.
That's under reimbursement for eligible activities,
That's correct.
that
Yes.
number? Okay. So the
This-
numerical
the-
numbers
yes,
are correct.
That's right.
In your transportation presentation, you were showing the other parts of the town,
Mhm.
Midland, sidewalk, school. This particular section here is going to be going out Vance Avenue, which already has a sidewalk.
Mhm.
And it comes and swings down towards Montreat College,
Uh-huh.
another existing sidewalk. So the only section is right at the bottom where the Montreat entrance is. There's a sidewalk that extends past that. Probably about 100 feet to the curb, and then it goes, then it turns, the road turns west.
It does.
And we go from there to the ball fields. My question is, if we're using sidewalks in these other sections, how is this going to change what is being done there?
It is going to extend the existing sidewalk, and then we're doing sharrows through the neighborhood where there's extremely low traffic volumes. I think there's also, sorry, I had to do that, I'll put that down. Existing sidewalk, or sorry, new sidewalk to connect the public parking lot up to the corner. We're on Black Mountain Avenue. We're on Terry Estates. They were able to add that in. So it's not I mean, it is sidewalks and sharrows. The more expensive, heavier infrastructure improvements are on section A, the intersection.
Mayor, this splits, it splits pedestrian traffic going on the existing sidewalks, and then it has sharrows on Terry Estates. You know, so it's kind of separating the bike and the pedestrian.
So this is not on Vance Avenue? This is on Cherry Estate?
The sharrows are on Terry Estates, yes. And so just as Mr. Hayes said, pedestrians are using existing infrastructure, and then it extends.
What type of a cost is that section in there?
Well, what's in front of you represents the total cost
I
for
see
that section.
I'm trying to get this section. And the reason I'm bringing this up is the fact that, you know, if we go ahead, if the board decides to do this, it's their decision. Even though it's now projected for these things to be there, if we wanted to go ahead and use that existing sidewalk on Vance Avenue, not have to build this new thing. Are there ways then, is there, in the presentation, can we go ahead and hopefully modify maybe some of this to go ahead and maybe reduce some of that cost?
I don't know what design you're suggesting be modified.
Well, I'm trying to say, like, at the very end, there's a sidewalk from the entrance to Montreat Fields to the beginning of the Indy Oaks Trail.
There is no proposition to not include the sidewalk extension to the existing. We want to see a full pedestrian network, particularly because as Montreat develops its campus, we will have, there's traffic, and right now people are having to walk in the road.
Yeah, on the main part of Vance Avenue. I'm talking about from the road where you enter into the complex, the athletic complex, to the Riverwalk Trail. I mean, that's a dead end section. I'm just saying, is that one of those things that we could possibly ask the designers to change in order to try to reduce some of the cost?
I think those costs are nominal. But you feel free to ask them if you want to.
So that is a possibility.
I don't really think so because you're changing the endpoint. The project endpoint is the Oaks. That's what the State Transportation Improvement Plan says.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to, I mean, we're talking about a greenway through the Oaks. It makes sense to have a cohesive walking path, right? The sidewalk. Instead of sending people out into the road, even though it is minimal traffic down there, but.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, would it not be possible to go ahead and close that section of Vance Avenue and then just turn that section over into a sidewalk?
Close it to traffic?
Yeah, there's no traffic there. The school bus used to go there, but the school bus doesn't go there anymore. I'm just saying, just still ways to try to help, reduce the cost on this. And we've got a perfectly good surface there for both bikes and for pedestrians. And that way, there would be no traffic there for them if we could close that one section. The main thing is, we don't have to decide that. I'm just trying to say, is that's something that we can discuss?
One point
At a later
I'll
date.
briefly mention is that we would also need to take into consideration turnarounds for emergency vehicles and access for emergency vehicles.
Oh.
So that would be a larger discussion that we would need to have as well.
This is the plan that we previously approved, is that correct?
It is, and I certainly appreciate there's been a lag time in that approval and the paperwork reflecting that approval being available, but that is all it is.
So the purpose of this document is to keep things consistent from the decision that was already made about the plan.
That's right.
Okay. So if citizens have concerns about the plan, their best source for feedback is at what stage?
This has been through an extensive planning process for years. All of this is in the town right of way. There's no ask for easements or anything like that. I think there's a possibility we might clip something that the utility company that we might have to deal with. We are not at that point to know for sure. But it was intentional, to stay in the town right of way because that was the resource we had available.
Thank you.
Yep.
And that section down there on Montreat property, that's within the town right away.
The Montreat, the sidewalk,
On their campus there.
it's a historic property, so we have right of way up to the curve and then we'll cross because it can't be on the other side because there's utilities and topography challenges.
But I'm saying where this sidewalk would be is not gonna be in the road. We're not gonna use the road itself.
Correct.
So we're gonna have to go into the woods onto Montreat campus. There's woods that comes right up to
It
that.
crosses the street there.
At the corner.
Where because there's sidewalk down to the entrance, the Montreat entrance, right? And then I believe it crosses the street, if I'm correct, and then and would use right of way on the other side of the street.
What is our right of way on that? For town streets and stuff?
It varies, unfortunately. Sometimes it's 30 feet, sometimes it's 40 feet, sometimes it's less than that.
But all this is part of the plan. It's been a multi-year planning process.
Yes.
That has been approved previously.
Yes.
And I would move we adopt, I don't even know what we're doing here. I would make a motion that the council adopts the agreement between DOT and the town of Black Mountain for EB 5547, section B as presented. Well, with the amendment of the typo.
That's right.
A second.
Any comments, any more discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous? Okay. Thank you, Jessica.
Yep.
Now we have, we move to citizen comments. Second section of citizen comments.
We have no one signed up, but if you'd like to open it up, you can do that.
So that's what I just wanted to ask you first. to see if there was anybody wish to speak? Please come up and give your name and address.
My name is Rick Post. I live on Midland Avenue towards First Street. Over the past year, not so much this year, 22, I didn't count them, but I would believe that there were probably about 6 tractor trailers that came up Midland and could not make that turn on to First Street. Some of them tried very, very well, but I would even think that the stop sign at the end of Midland being crooked might have been part of the tractor trailer's attempt to turn. The curbing along Midland has been broken at points. I can't say the tractor trailer did that, but it wouldn't surprise me that it did. My concern is that sometime a tractor trailer driver is going to come up there and he or she is not going to be an expert driver. And when they have to back down Midland, my fear is that someone will be hurt. So my request is that for the council to consider is that to have some type of sign. I know the first gentleman that spoke was talking about Broadway and how the tractor trailers are. I don't know how they even make it up to Broadway or how they make it up to Midland, because these trailers are at least 60 feet long, probably more. So I would ask that the council look into it and find out why I'm mad at myself that I never stopped the tractor trailer driver and said, how did you get up here? I mean, are they following GPS and the GPS is wrong or whatever? So as a parent, as a concerned citizen, I would request that the council look into it and if they deem it necessary to do something. I don't know what that is, a sign or whatever, because I think it's a dangerous situation. That's it. Do you have any questions?
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Post.
Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, we'll move on to new business. As a matter of fact, that's the first thing. It's truck track.
What was you ready to say for that? Okay.
So Josh was going to be leading that, so. Span, if you want to
Yes,
bring that
so
up.
I believe the town manager is just seeking direction from the council concerning a truck traffic ordinance for Midland Avenue and whether or not you would like us to do some research into that. We could bring you some ordinances. You have examples in your packet of ordinances from other towns, but if that's something that you're interested in possibly pursuing, we can put together an ordinance and bring it back to you.
Pleasure of the council.
I think that would be a real good idea. Mr. Post contacted me with video. It was pretty impressive, but at that point I related the concern to Josh and he checked, I believe, with our public safety officials and they indicated they didn't have concerns about putting up signage that said no 18-wheelers. We didn't want to do anything that made it hard for the public safety folks, but I think the process you just indicated would be a good idea.
Yeah, I would support that as well. My only comment would be that it would not start until after, the restaurant or anything else. that, could be impacted, or it could need a tractor trailer.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there'd be any impact with Honeycutt and that being one way, but I think just thoughtfulness about the placement of that sign. Yeah, what about if folks are moving, I think Doug, you brought this up on Thursday, someone rents a moving van having
I believe it was our
Sure.
public works director who brought up that we could potentially regulate it by axle.
would
So
be a good thing.
that would exempt
Okay.
moving trucks and smaller vehicles like that and
Yes.
only regulate 18-wheelers and larger.
Okay,
larger
thanks.
trucks.
I would support looking into it for sure. Unfortunately, we can't change the GPS units. I've seen some trucks in some really weird places in this town. And they have no idea why they are there. They're looking at their, the maps.
Mhm.
But it sounds like this would be a good step, considered a step.
Well, we will, we'll bring something back to you soon then.
Okay, good enough, thank you. Next is a stormwater utility billing discussion and direction. Jessica, you're on again. Okay.
Yes, you will.
So when we started stormwater utility, we did not have software that had the capacity to just create a second billing list or to add on these other fees. We tried all sorts of things to try to figure that out, and it didn't work. But our finance department now has new software that will make this very simple. So all we're looking for tonight is direction. That is something that you would like us to look at, because in order to make that transition, a lot of work has to happen, and actually a small amendment has to happen to the text of the ordinance to reflect that change in the billing. So I would bring those documents back to you, and we would just be able to start preparing for that, and it would be next into August, September, when that transition actually started. So that would put it on monthly bill. People could still have the choice to pay early. They would just have a credit on their account. And that's,
Meaning they could pay in full for
If
the
they wanted
year
to, sure.
or split it up
Yep.
month to month.
they would just have that choice.
Because this fall, I heard a lot of folks say they wish they could just pay it by the month.
Oh, we did too, but now we can. So it's up to you, but that's the direction we're looking for.
I think that'd be a real good idea.
Good idea.
I'd support that. Yep.
One of the concerns before was that if you weren't on the water, didn't receive water bill, they didn't have the ability to.
There's going to be some cross-referencing for those folks, but I'm hopeful, and Tammy Holland and I will have to work on that, if we can create either a subset in the module, that we'll figure out a way to handle it, but everybody will still have equal opportunity to pay their bill.
I'm glad that's an option.
Well, me too.
Could I ask a question about stormwater not related to billing while you're there? Jessica? And that is, this has come up, I just would like to clarify, I think, for the public. Is there any ability of this council to exempt anyone, take a vote? If somebody is counting votes and says, well, if I can just get 3 people on the board here to agree to exempt something, is that something that this board has the ability to do?
No, this local board cannot overturn any regulations set forth by the federal government. These are not optional things that we are complying with.
So if someone is telling them that, it's incorrect information.
That's true.
Thank you, that's helpful.
And I'll just stay because I think I'm up again.
You're up next. It's your night.
Go ahead.
So the next item on the agenda is an ordinance to amend Chapter 20, Section 20-203, accumulations prohibited, to add text specific to construction waste debris. We are required to have certain litter control measures for certain types of litter in our ordinances. And when we reviewed them, we did not have anything specific to construction waste. We'll say most of the time people do have a dumpster on site, but sometimes they don't. The material can go flying. And the concern of the permit is that those things then end up in waterways. So there's already language that deals with accumulations unrelated to. So if you are taking out your carpet or replacing your cabinets, which just don't need a building permit, you can't just leave them in the front yard just because you didn't need a dumpster. Accumulations will take care of that. This is very specific to construction sites. If you've got a building permit, you're building that deck, you're building that house, you gotta have a place to put it and keep things tidy. And that's it.
It is tied to permit.
It is a requirement of the NPDS permit that we have this specific type of litter control under our legal authority. It's the term they use.
And so, like an electrician permit or something like that, would that, I mean, if someone was doing some minor changes to their plumbing, for example, would that?
Just don't leave it in the front yard. You don't have to have the dumpster to contain, you have to keep it tidy.
Oh,
And
okay.
if such an, amount of it warrants a dumpster or containment, put it in something.
And when you say dumpster, and then you just qualify that and say container. So as long as they've got containers,
If it says dumpster, dumpster, but if it's something you can walk away with and dispose of, that's fine.
It sounds like quantity kind of.
Yeah,
Is
and
key
like
here.
common sense is going to prevail
Yeah.
in this situation. Originally, we sort of thought that our actual accumulation ordinances were sufficient in these situations. I know that we have done code enforcement under accumulations for this very problem, but we are supposed to have a very specific one to speak to only this one. So now, there it is.
and so if we have somebody that has gone ahead and put this stuff in the backyard, out of the front yard, but now the neighbors are complaining because they didn't have a dumpster.
You're gonna get code enforcement either way. Accumulations really do cover this. It's just, they say we have to have a separate one for construction waste.
Yeah, I mean, my only concern is like smaller projects. If and let's say I'm replacing the railing on my deck, right? I would probably need a permit to make sure that I'm up to code to do that. Maybe I would. But I just want to make sure I don't need to pay $100 for a dumpster.
Just dispose of it. Just don't create an accumulation
Okay.
one way or the other.
Okay, all right.
So the key word here is just simply accumulation in the front yard.
I mean, I see in the text here on-site containers
Yeah,
for loose
containers.
debris, so be that a dumpster or a.
Some people have stacked it neatly and covered it. That has been sufficient in the past.
And I believe what we're thinking is that this will be largely complaint driven,
Mhm.
or spotted by our building inspector as he goes out inspecting sites. So, for small projects, if you're throwing them, in other places or just not having them out where your neighbors can see and it be a nuisance, I don't think it's gonna be an issue.
Any other discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Everybody vote?
Did we have a motion?
We didn't have a motion.
Good catch,
We
Pam.
have a motion.
Did we have a motion?
No, we did not.
I didn't.
We will backtrack.
Let's try that again.
Do I hear a motion to accept this?
I move
ordinance?
that the council adopt the ordinance to amend chapter 20, section 2203, accumulation prohibited, to add tax for the construction waste as presented.
Any discussion, any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. All right. The Community Waste Reduction Grant Application.
So we're gonna have Rochelle come up. She is our waste reduction specialist, and she's going to be presenting more information about our next two agenda items with us.
Hi, everyone. My name's Rochelle. I'm the community waste specialist, waste reduction specialist, and I'm looking to apply for 2 grants, one specifically with the state and the other one with the recycling partnership, which would give us grant funding to purchase recycling carts for all the residents. And these grants specifically promote equitable access to the recycling carts for residents at no cost for residents. With that said, you have some of those numbers in front of you for how much we would be getting for each grant. Those numbers then combined would be that sum that we have to take on, which should be on the summary. But yeah, switching to the recycling carts, we are the last local municipality in Buncombe County to still be using the blue bags versus having recycling carts. And blue bags, unfortunately, are not recyclable with Kirby. They are considered a contaminant, and approximately 70% of the contaminants at Kirby are plastic bags. And Kirby spends about $10,000 a month removing those contaminants on top of having specific laborers just to rip those bags open, like rip open the bags, pull them out so that they don't ruin the machinery that they're using. Also, switching over to the carts would provide a safer work environment for sanitation workers. We've already invested in cart tippers for the vehicles, and a lot of people who have bins, or if we were to have just bins and not carts, like the example over here, sanitation workers are having to lift those then, bend over and do manual lifting. And so over time, we could see a decrease in like insurance premiums and compensation claims. Also, just an estimate that if we were to switch over to carts, the town would eliminate over 244,000 plastic bags annually out of the waste stream. And right now, our landfill fee is at $55 a ton. I calculated the average recycling fee. Right now, our recycling is at a market rate, so it's not a standard rate like our landfill fees. So right now, that's at about $38.60 per ton, which is lower than our landfill fee. And right now, recycling is about 13% of our general waste, which is lower than the EPA's average from 2018, which is, I believe, 23%. So ours right now is lower. So switching to the carts, not only are we giving people more volume to recycle, but then we can increase recycling tonnage, potentially decrease some of our disposal costs on landfill. And on top of that too, applying for these grants, we would be getting access to technical assistance from the recycling partnership, from the state as well. And they'll be able to give us educational materials that can go out to public. Right now, we don't quite use what the county and the state uses because they promote not using blue bags, which we are still using. So we don't really use the county resources right now. So us kind of switching over, then we also have access to all those additional resources that are already available. Yeah.
If you got any questions, we'll be more than glad to answer anything.
I'd like to say welcome. I'm pretty excited that we have a waste reduction specialist and that the fruits of your labor are coming before us tonight.
Thank you.
You know, it's pretty obvious that we have a lot of folks in town that are not recycling yet, and I think whatever we can do to make it easier and more convenient for people is a good thing. We really need to encourage everything we can to do. The waste reduction is so important. We're not even talking about compost tonight, but just this recycling. Really, anybody that doesn't recycle at this point is costing the town money. So whatever we can do, I think, to make it more convenient and easier. The wheels are an appealing feature to me at this point in my life. So, you know, I'm real supportive of this idea. Of course, we have to talk about the money. it's it's a lot of money.
Yes, correct. And then just to comment on that sum of money that that we're asking. Right now, just on average, if I was doing some math with a guide the recycling partnership has, uh, with our current average recycling fees alone, even we would be able to save up to, or starting at $11,000 annually, just by switching over to the carts and being able to recover more recyclables. Like I said, on top of the sanitation workers and, potentially lowering uh, compensation claims,
Right.
insurance premiums. And you're talking about the toter carts. Specifically, this is a toter cart. That vendor was recommended by the state and by Kirby, who is our MRF, where we take all our recycling. They're recommended because they have the longest warranty out of anyone. They have a 12-year warranty, and they said on average, the carts that they provide last between 15 to 20 years versus any other competitor, it's closer to 5 to 10 years. And you're talking about the wheels specifically. If you look at that cart, the wheels are in place where they don't stick out, so they're not really going to pop out. Like I said, on top of the 12-year warranty, compared to just any of the other competitors. So it is a investment right now that would eventually be saving the town money. On top of, if we're promoting recycling a lot to residents, providing them with resources that they have to recycle right, recycle better, we could see savings from landfill costs, like even more.
I'd just like to add that with current inflation and stuff too, the 18-gallon recycled bins that we used to purchase were $12.25 a piece. They are currently $58.95 a piece. So, and doing some research today, had Tasha look into some organizations that supply them, and the cheapest ones we found at this time are about $28 a piece. So I just say that to say this, that, these prices could change moving forward. Who knows how much? So it's just something to think about moving forward. If it's something that you think you may want to do, it's only going to go up, in my opinion, before it ever comes back down. But I just wanted to just throw that in there for thought, food for thought.
Yeah, and those bins don't have, a 12-year warranty on them. That then potentially we'd have to keep rebuying them, or they would get cracked, and then those end up being something that have to essentially go to landfill versus the toter ones, the warranty. And also they have a separate project where, let's say in 15, 12 years, if those get destroyed, they take them back and recycle them into their new carts. That's something that all these grants ask for, is that there's a percentage of like post-consumer recycled content in the toter carts, or just in carts in general.
Yeah, and you mentioned, Pam, more people recycling, and you may know this, you may not, but like when recycle's good and it's bringing the money, say for instance like cardboard, which she mentioned things are down right now, but the first 4 or 5 months of the year, Kirby was actually sending us checks like for a couple $1,000 because stuff was at a premium high, which I couldn't understand. If you're in a business, and you're in it to make money, how are you sending us money back? So, we looked into that too. So I can't explain it in detail, but I can sure read the response if you ever wonder why that is. But the more recycled, the more money we could get back, depending on what the market value is at the time.
Yeah, that's definitely correct. I didn't want to actively promote that we could be, increasing money, but that is definitely a possibility. Granted, like if the commodity rate is better.
So what about all the bins that we currently have out there now? Will we gather them back up?
Yeah, so I actually just got a message back from specifically the recycling partnership, just about people who already have recycling bins. And they recommend us still giving them this bin and, having them use that for a month to see how they feel about it. Their whole thing is being able to give everybody access to recycling carts, not having residents pay for these, just so everyone has access to recycling. And then going from there, a lot of times too, I don't know if everyone has, this 96-gallon cart, but that's what all the other towns have. That's what we need to have to apply for these grants, since we do bi-weekly pickup. So the requirement also would have to be that they would have to be the larger bins. But it can be definitely a case-by-case scenario. That was what he said, if people don't want to keep their bin, Toter could take them back and then process that into their new bins, for example, or they can just keep them and not, like I said, it can be more case by case, or that's something we can discuss at a later time that doesn't need to be discussed for specifically to apply for the grants necessarily. But that's something that we can come to a
Let's
consensus
find
on.
another municipality that wants bins.
Right.
They'll
Well,
have
and that's
them
even,
recycled and then check.
that's even like, this is a hypothetical, we could keep those bins or take them and save them for another project. Like you mentioned, composting, we could talk about other ways that we could reuse them. That's just me speaking.
From a more personal standpoint, I would like to see them get the cars just for, like Rochelle mentioned, the, workman's comp claims and things like that, because I hear from these employees, without saying any names, you take a restaurant that, serves a lot of beverages, and they use these bins, and there's 8 or 10 of them sitting out there in the rain, and they get full of water because they got no lid. It takes 2 or 3 people to lift those to get them in the truck, and, and I hear the complaints about, how hard it is on their back and stuff, so I don't have none yet, don't want none, but I sure don't want to, any way we could prevent that would be good, good on my part.
Well, and that's necessarily too for commercial, specifically, I guess, for residential too. Like, these carts have that lid specifically, and other residents might just have, who knows what, trash can might not have the lid. The lid might be cracked or broken. It's the same scenario.
And they have the bar to use
Yeah,
with
so
the
you can
lift.
see, and you can feel free to take a look over there, even like after we wheel it a little bit. They've got the bar on there. We've already invested in cart tippers on these trucks, and that's basically what they're for, is lifting those types of carts.
I think there's a lot to like about this idea. I did hear from a citizen, I think they're probably not in a unique situation, but just perceiving this as being, kind of a hardship to get down their driveway. It's an incline, and so it sounds like there are going to be options. So it doesn't have to be one size fits all.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah.
And honestly, just from what I've seen from our sanitation workers, they're very on top of, this person, like, I can assist them. We have great sanitation workers. So, case by case, of course, if we need to be the ones to, wheel it over.
Yeah.
In general, though, and I've used these type of carts before, just like, they can wheel a lot and not be like too much of a hassle. Like I said, all residents then could get the option of having them, of course, and
Trying
then
it out,
seeing what works
yeah.
with them, having all of us on hand just for assistance as well.
But the
but I
grants.
agree.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that was all I was saying.
Okay. The grants specifically are for the 96.
Correct. So to apply for these grants, which are due, so one of them, the state grant, is due in the month of February and is only around once a year. So if we were to not take on this grant, we would have to wait a full year to reapply or apply. And the other one can be kind of done whenever we would like. But you need to have the 96-gallon cart because we do bi-weekly pickup. And this, like, for example, the city of Asheville, that's what they do, bi-weekly pickup, 96-gallon carts. And that is what the state and what Kirby, who is our MRF, recommended for us versus the smaller one. And in general, too, I know that they do look really big and bulky, but if we are trying to promote recycling tonnage and increase recycling tonnage, that gives us the option of doing that versus having a smaller cart where, they
I
just
hear from people all the time that they hate the bags.
Yeah.
They have way more recycling than they can put in the little bins. So
Yeah. Well, and personally for me, like in my home, I gather more recycling than trash. Now I'm more conscious of it, but there's a possibility we can get a lot of residents with the right education to be recycling better. And yeah, and they might be able to fill those, and have less in their trash, I guess.
And then something else to mention, talking about bi-weekly recycling, you hear a lot of residents say, well, we do it weekly. That would be great, but because we do bulk, that day of bulk takes up, or that's the reason we have to do it bi-weekly. Or we have to hire 2 more people, which, if you know anything about the temperature of employment, it's not that great right now trying to find people, so, it's sort of challenging, but I just thought I'd throw that out there about the bi-weekly. If you get any questions or anything, that's why we do it bi-weekly, because we have to take that extra day to do bulk and brush and things of that nature. So. But we're just thankful and appreciate the opportunity to let us present you some facts. And I know it's a hard decision and it's a lot of money and it's a case by case thing. But Rochelle's done a really good job on it. She's had her nose to the ground for 2 months and met with a lot of people. So she's gathered a lot of good information from what we didn't already have. So very, very appreciative of the work she's done.
Josh, are you available for a question?
I didn't even realize he was.
He was just getting ready to answer and the Zoom call ended, so he disappeared. So right on cue, yeah.
He was just saying that he was done. You don't need to do this. Okay.
Jamie, have you looked into the costs of going ahead and getting Kirby to do our recycling for us?
We did in the beginning, but I cannot remember what those numbers was, but I could be more glad to revisit that again if that's something that would be interesting.
It's just a suggestion, because since we're having trouble with labor,
Yeah.
and if it runs a little bit more, that means we don't have to hire these folks, we have to pay them.
Yeah,
Just the same way that we did with the police department, we've gone ahead and subbed that out.
We looked in the beginning before we got the extra 2 employees that we had when we started with 5, but I cannot remember what those numbers were, but we did look at it as an option. Which it could be different now, but I cannot remember what those numbers were.
I will say, when we did meet with Kirby, in general for them, they're also having labor issues, like along with everybody, of course. But they did mention that they are having labor issues just like us. And while they're talking about how many people have to manually rip apart the bags, that was kind of where that conversation came in on their end.
Well, it sounds like we're not talking about increasing staffing and sanitation right now, so.
No.
No, but I'm just thinking of ways to go ahead and sub out some of our work. If we're having trouble getting employees, that this may be an option
We're
to consider.
we're full right now on our sanitation.
Awesome.
The thing that really hurts us is when the state changed the requirements on the CDL license.
Yeah.
To where we used to do it in-house, and now we're having to reach out to college, and it's 72 hours online, and it's just a bunch of extra work. And so we're looking into that too, and we've got some better news about that, but, to get some employees, because our drivers are what we really struggle getting when it comes to the CDLs.
What is what will the policy be then? Looking to get a container for everyone in town. But what about, we have a lot of retired people in town. I mean, a lot of retired people. And so that they, not only would they not need that capacity, because a lot of them are single, but if they could probably handle the small totes much better.
So,
So what would be, what's the scenario for that?
yeah, Jamie's gonna answer that.
So the way we currently got it now for like a backdoor stop, where we use the scout truck, which also has kippers on it. If they could supply something from a doctor or something, say they wasn't physically able to get those to the curb, then if they just left it outside, like I do against the back of my house and fill it full, then we could do what they call a backdoor stop. That could be an option if they could, get a doctor to say that they was not physically able to get it to the road.
I think that needs to be in there for sure.
Oh, yeah, and that's
Because
definitely,
we've got a lot of older people that just couldn't. Moving that container around is not as easy as picking up trash.
But we have our town manager back on, so if anyone had any questions for Josh, he is available.
My question was, if we decided to proceed with this, I think you researched some options for financing, and I just wanted to know what our choices were in that regard.
So can you hear me?
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, so the options on the financing, I looked at a 4 and 5 year term. I don't know that we need to go that long if we're only going to be borrowing. I think it's essentially $240,000. At a 4 year term, you are looking at a larger payment, probably around $38,000, give or take a little bit. And then at a 5 year term, you're probably looking at about $25,000. That's approximate numbers, but it may even be if council is interested in doing this, getting another option on a 3 year term to see what that looks like as well.
Can you go through the numbers again? I wasn't following that. You say 25,000 for 5
So,
years.
so,
25,000
so 5 years, well,
4 or 5 years would be 125,000.
so you got it. I'm sorry, what did you say?
I'm just saying, you were talking about 25,000. We're looking at borrowing, quarter of a million. Wouldn't that be for 5 years, be closer to 50,000 then?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mayor. So without looking at interest rates, it's $60,000 for 4 years, and 5 years, $48,000, but the interest rate's 4.75%.
All right.
Josh, I have a question. Of course, I mean, I'm super happy to see this because I've been pushing for regular carts and recycle carts. And I'm pushing for using our, some of the money that we have, but that's a different question. But when do we, if we apply for this grant, does that mean we are obligated to do this, or do we have a chance in the budget cycle to figure out if this is something that we really want to do?
I don't have that in front of me, Council Member Christie, but I would sure hope if we got the grant, they would let us roll this into our budget in July, starting July 1.
I can answer that question.
Okay.
A lot of these grants, they don't even start, we can't even start, accumulating costs until July. And being able to apply for the grant doesn't mean that this number is the exact fixed number. We still have time to come up with a specific solution. That doesn't mean you have to come up with a fixed solution at this point. The resolution is just to apply for these grants.
So, okay,
So-
that's really my question. So
Yes.
that if we apply for this, if it's part of our budget process, if the council decided, hey, we're not in a position to do this, it would still be okay?
Yeah,
That's the question.
So I did double check that, looking at specifically the grant from the state, and we are able to decline offers if we do change our mind. Like I said, this is primarily for applying for the grants to see how much money we can get for them. And Brittany from Toter even said, if we are considering even splitting up payments from fiscal year, we could talk about doing that. She's very open to coming
Okay.
up with solutions for that.
I'm glad you asked that.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think the
that's-
timing of this
So,
is
yeah, so
really
we're
hard.
not committing, we're not saying we have to spend this.
Yeah.
Correct.
We're just saying, let's look and see. That gives us something further to discuss in our budget deliberations.
Yes, that's what the resolution specifically state is the approval to apply for both grants.
So that's what you're looking for from us tonight.
Correct.
It's just approval. To go ahead and apply.
Correct, yes.
Thanks.
I would say that if we didn't think we would want to find the money, that we probably shouldn't apply for it, but.
I agree. But my point is, we're not absolutely locked in.
Right.
If, the world falls apart and we have to back up and look at something different, we still have the option to do it.
Yes.
Any more discussion? Any more questions for Josh? If not, do I hear a motion?
I move that the resolution is in support of Public Works Department application for community waste reduction recycling grant.
Okay, any more discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Are we voting separately on each?
Yes, you'll need to
Correct.
vote separately on each.
Thank you.
And the second one, we need a motion for the second resolution here.
I move the council approve applying for this grant funding.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous again.
Thank you.
Josh.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we don't have any public hearing. And Sneed, do you have anything?
I do. I have a brief announcement. A couple of months ago, this board voted to put out an RFP for a new town attorney or for the town attorney slot. I just want to advise the board tonight that after just having spent a couple of years at this job, I will not be bidding on this job just going forward. I will re-advise the people I notified of the RFP that I won't be bidding in case any of them chose not to bid against me, and just to make sure you guys get a good feel of the candidates. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You'll certainly be losing a wealth of knowledge. You've done a good job.
I'll be around. I'll coach them into getting you into trouble.
All right, Josh, you got anything?
I have a few quick ones. I don't think he has anything. The first being is that we have updated our phone menu to make it easier for citizens when you call in. So hopefully it's a lot easier to get in touch with the person you're looking for now. Wanted to mention that. Also, there is a more complete directory, a staff directory, which can be found on our website. I also wanted to mention that we have an open spot on our Active Mobility Commission. We'll be advertising that opening, but if you are interested and you would like an application, you can get that on our website, or you can email town.clerk@tobm.org and I will send you one. I also, last thing is that we have a stream bank repair workshop that's going to be held on March 16th, and you can also find more information on our website about that. But that should be interesting for those of you who may, I believe it's live staking, is that right? Yeah, who might be interested in live staking. And also just thank you to Attorney Sneed for all of your hard work throughout the years. We're going to miss you.
I'll be around.
And the retreat, what date, time,
The
place?
council retreat is the 25th of February. I believe that we plan to start at 8 a.m. and that will be at the, in the Oaks, the Manor House.
Anybody have anything else? If not,
Mr. Mayor, I do. If I may.
Okay.
I have I just wanted to make sure I had my thoughts straight on this, so I'd like to read just a statement. And these are my thoughts. I'd like to enter in the record on the MLK Day and Black History Month. So this is a good time for reflections on the basic principles of equality and justice for all as stated in the proclamation from the town of Black Mountain, as in the minutes from our January meeting on the MLK Day. And I agree with those. And that caused me, in addition to February being Black History Month, it's caused me to think a little bit, and I would urge everyone to use this as a time of reflection. The Declaration of Independence says all men are created equal and endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, among those being life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Of course, the common understanding of those principles then was different than what we have now. Then, they thought they only applied to white men with property, certainly not to women, not to enslaved or indigenous peoples. Obviously, we have evolved in our understanding of that. Dr. King's legacy reminds us that we still have a ways to go. We've made progress, of course, but I challenge all to consider carefully and honestly what history teaches us. We need look no further than North Carolina for important lessons. Of course, North Carolina was a slave state and seceded from the Union partly to protect the rights of states to determine the question of whether or not people could be lawfully enslaved. North Carolina was home to many indigenous peoples, many of whom were part of the great dispossession of native peoples of their land in the famous Trail of Tears, that not only removed the Cherokee from this area, but removed many other indigenous peoples in the Deep South that coincidentally led to a great land grab by farmers of cotton and other crops that depended upon enslaved people to farm the land. North Carolina is also home to what is called the Wilmington Race Riots, but in fact, it's an overthrow of a duly elected citizens by those who were enraged that formerly enslaved people were assuming positions of equality. We need look no further than the building of the railroad up to Old Fort Grade, which depended upon de facto enslavement of Black Americans to build the railroad, and opened up Western North Carolina. Marion Wright Edelman once said that America was born with the twin birth defects of genocide and slavery. And like many birth defects, they never go away, but it's possible to compensate. I believe that this time of honoring Dr. King and celebrating Black's history should be a somber time for those in the historical majority, the whites, to look on history with an open eye, not for the purpose of casting blame or shame, but for the purpose of recognizing historical facts, and by that recognition be more dedicated to promoting the principles of equality for all. Thank you for
Very well said.
allowing me to say that.
Very well said.
Before we adjourn, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to also thank Councilmember King, Councilmember Berry, Councilmember Hay, Councilmember Christie, for attending the Martin Luther King Corporation program that we had last weekend. I do appreciate that. Thank you so much.
And Vice Mayor, thank you for your words at the event.
I would like to kind of echo the proclamation from earlier and congratulate the chamber for 100 years. And right now we are seeing so much growth in the business sector here in Black Mountain and Swannanoa. And I just would like to say my appreciation to Sharon and to the entire chamber board and all the chamber members for helping to kind of facilitate that growth and all the work that you're doing.
I just wanted to give a little shout out. I'm just still caught up in your words. Those were so moving, but just a shout out to, I understand over 300 people ran in the 5K, 10K to Valentine's Day. And I think that's wonderful that so many of our community members got out there in their pink tutus and whatever and ran. It all benefits the town and the greenway system. So thank you.
Yes, matter of fact, there was 340.
Was
I
it?
was there for that.
Good.
To talk to different people and thank them for running. Anything else? That's it. Meeting adjourned.